A great honor. I still don't know. It's also a pleasure to talk to you here. And really, my talk will be very much relying on my quite recent experience. Vivi mentioned that one episode in my life, which was very important for me, was to be rapporteur in European Parliament on GDPR, shadow rapporteur on GDPR and rapporteur recently on e-privacy regulation. And I want to share with you some of my experience from this period in my life. Now it's ended, I'm back in university. After e-privacy was voted in Parliament, I went back. And what I learned from this. At first, being there in this really very good team of people, I had quite an exceptional opportunity because all others, or mostly all others, were lawyers. I was there the only social scientist, and even more narrowly, all my life I have been teaching and dealing with communication theory. And I have been also in all my life making research, meaning that I also was dealing with computing. So I had quite a unique experience among the lawyers there. And for me, it was really very, very instructive to have this attempt to be in this loop, what Professor Honkala was describing, from intention to action, to try to regulate the area of this new digital world, digital reality we are living in. And in these discussions, really, at first we had to make clear why we need this regulation, because regulation was very much questioned mostly by business people, but also by some others. And there was different matters for discussion. At first, idea that digital is different itself, why it's different. And here there are very important moments which we had to have in mind. And two of them, I suppose, are most obvious. One is that in digital world there is an unlimited capacity for storage of different information, and storage also for different times, also to infinite times. If you compare it to human memory, then human memory, human culture is built up not only on processing of information, but very much also on forgetting. The capacity to forget is very basic. Without that, we really couldn't really live our normal lives. You know, there may be some people among your friends who remember too much, who remember each detail of your communication, maybe from tens of years from past, or what you have done when you were in some situation and other situation, and so on. And they remind it if they're not delicate. If they're delicate, they don't remind, but they remember it. And you feel quite uncomfortable with these people because you feel that there are things you would prefer not to be reminded or not to be remembered. That's part of human communication. So communication with machine, communication with information system on digital area, it's very different from communication among people, namely from this viewpoint. And certainly the other very, very important and already discussed viewpoint or aspect is the speed of processing. The scope, amount, and speed of processing. The capacity to have from different sources, data gathered together and processed, analyzed in a way what human beings normally don't do. And what it will mean for people. What it will mean for people if they are living in this kind of environment where they cannot control what information about them is available to somebody or to anybody, what could be done with that, what could be the influence of that on their lives, on their relations, on their self-understanding, and so on. So this is a very simple human starting point. And it's connected to a thing we call human rights. Working on regulation, on privacy, on data protection, we had a lot of very severe discussions, even conflicts, between the people who said that in digital world, human rights don't matter. It's 19th, 20th century. It's over. 21st century shouldn't think about human rights. It should think about the new opportunities, about the business opportunities, about the unlimited knowledge and so on. And human rights is something which doesn't belong to 21st century. And that means that we had to discuss that issue in this new digital context. And the viewpoint in these regulations was from the individual autonomy. We all know, maybe we don't know all, some of us know, that to feel that you are controlled, monitored, you are under surveillance, it is very harmful to your capacity to think freely, not only to speak freely, but even to think freely. People have a lot of, capacity to control themselves innerly. And what Freud was dealing with, looking at the individual, making difference between the superego and ego, now you don't need Freud. Society itself is developing a visible superego, controlling all deeds, all actions, all intentions even of people through this new digital environment. And this means that it could be good, maybe for kind of, say, safety, but from other side, it will limit people's freedom of expression, freedom of thinking, capacity for inventing new things, capacity of coming out of the box, or whatever. Though, to protect data, to protect privacy means protect human autonomy, human freedom. That was our basic fundamental, say, starting point. And also what we experienced in discussing these things was that to understand why we need this regulation, or why we have to think about some harmful effects of the new digital environment, about all these new possibilities created by artificial intelligence, and so on. In order to understand that, we have to understand human problems. We have to understand why in culture, in history, humankind have developed some values, some norms, some taboos. In what circumstances these taboos, these norms and values have been changing, have been broken. How was developed this whole very complicated cultural system, which is part of our everyday existence, and what is not always understood by us consciously, but what is very much inbuilt in us, in the process of growing up, maturing, being socialized, and so on. Professor Tonkala before said that maybe now, communicating with artificial intelligence, people can come out from culture box. Meaning, if we speak that we don't need any more categories, but each and every word really is a category. If we speak about a tree, it is a category, because there is a lot of different trees. Even if we speak about some concrete tree, birch, for example, it's not This tree in our courtyard, in our wood, it's an idea, abstract. So this cultural, say, process have through thousands, through millennia really, already created conventions, what now we are talking about as a new thing, conventions about the meaning, conventions about the generalization. So now in this work of making abstract concept, moral concept, ethical concept, in a culture process, people have been really solving some problems. They didn't happen just occasionally. It was historical, cultural, human experience inbuilt in language, inbuilt in culture, and so on. And so how we can then build up artificial intelligence without knowing the context? It was told, yes, we need a context, but context is in culture, context is in history, in the languages, different languages. You know how difficult it is to create understanding between Christianic and Islamic understanding of the world. I'm not talking about politics. For example, the structure of the time in grammar is different in different languages, meaning different understanding of time, fundamental. And so human problems related and expressed in different languages, different culture, different religions, they cannot be calculated. They are born from the experience, practices of human relations, of not only between individuals, but also relations between groups of individuals, between generations, and so on and so on. And that means that when we regulate things, when we start to regulate that, then we have to foresee how now this artificial intelligence, how now these new digital opportunities, the new ways for data processing, how they intervene in this cultural, say, material or cultural system. Because it's not so that you here build up something like a new language, and here we have the old one, and then we can say now we have some meeting point. No, it's really a recursive process. The influence is coming in with each step, and how we can foresee what will be the impact of that. And when we were discussing all those things, then at first we discovered, but even with help of all experts from different sciences, we still came to points where we had answer, we don't know. Medical science said we don't know that. Historical discoveries were not enough to understand some, say, moments in development. Social sciences, law, they haven't dealt with all these issues so much. So what we discovered was this new situation, this challenge made by AI, challenge made by digital environment. It really is encouraging, stimulating research in absolutely different areas, in humanities, in social sciences, in law, and so on. But how about vice versa? I suppose a very important problem is that we have very weak the loop for using in technological development all that knowledge, what we have gathered about language, about semiotics, about history, culture, social, and so on. We more and more are bringing walls between different spheres of knowledge, not putting them together. There are happy laboratories, there are happy teams who can put them together. But if we look at the majority of the technological development, then it's very much outside of that sphere of knowledge which is indispensable to have the real convergence between AI and the human society. And this is really the problem also of education. I suppose that one of our major challenges really in this new situation coming to the digital era is that all system of education, starting from the structure of school and classrooms, starting from the role of teacher versus role of student, Starting from the idea where children have to go to school and what they have to learn there and what is left for so-called real life for some other spheres and so on. It's all been developed through centuries in the culture which was built on printed book. It is structured according to reading books. It is structured according to classification of sciences, which is really very well represented in the institution we call library. And what is not any more relevant in this digital world. At the same time, when we speak about data here with you, we take it for granted that we all understand what data are or is. Even here, we are not very much in common, because in social science, we certainly say data are. In technological speak, very often, I hear data is. And what is data compared to indicator, compared to information, compared to knowledge? What is different between knowledge and some analytical system? In legislation, we try to anticipate development by giving individuals very strong opportunity to have new digital rights, to be owners of own data. That is inscribed in regulation, that data subject is owner of own data, and also that it described or inscribed even that each and every person has a right to know about algorithms which are used to process his or her data and to understand what kind of profiling is done. It is in law, but it's not in school curricula. If you ask children or grown-ups or people of older generation what they think what are the data, then really they don't know. If you talk with them about algorithm, they don't have a clue what you're talking about. If you will look what is taught in schools about computers or about math, it's all connected with mostly engineering. And it's only one very small example, because when we try to look as a whole entity of the new knowledge needed in order that people will be capable to be autonomous, active, reflective in this new digital environment, really to use their rights, to anticipate the impact, to protect, for example, children, then basic knowledge for that is not given as part of a general curriculum. Nowhere. Still nowhere. And it's not only a problem that people are not taught like in classroom. It's a problem of how this knowledge should be built up, the structure of education. It should be different to prepare people to act, to anticipate, to reflect, to foresee what is the next stage of development. And that means that now the absolutely new round of discussions is starting. It's already started. I'm very glad to say that when I read the OECD vision paper about future of education, then it's obvious that the paradigm of education wants to be changed from this discipline-based, just information packages, to the knowledge how to anticipate, reflect, and act in this super complex, complicated world, which is created by this merger between digital and human. And certainly that's a beginning. And working in Parliament on these matters, what I really have understood and felt with whole my skin even, is a time. How difficult, how long it will take to change this kind of thinking and paradigms. How difficult it is to change the idea of people about their normal context, normal environment, so that it will include all this new digital world. Because until now, mostly, digital is understood only at first as entertainment, second, as everyday, not very meaningful communication, exchanging tweets and social media, and third, something very highbrow technological somewhere there, who are developing something ordinary people shouldn't understand. And this is really the surface behind what the huge monopolies are using our data, are mastering all these new technologies, and very much are against all kind of this new legislation, new education, and so forth, what will empower people from children to grown-ups as citizens to take part in regulation, take part in decision about the developments, take part in protecting own rights. So I suppose it's this gap between this surface where like everybody is using all new digital media and means and the real substantial development going on. The gap is really widening. And when we don't look at education with this new view, don't change education, don't change understanding that digital is part of everyday context, of everyday life for everybody, and what it will need compared to people who were educated for a world which wasn't digital. It's like analog versus digital in real life also. Then we will, or we could end really in a total control. Because old institutions, the old forms of political life, they really enable to use the data for total control. And people who have been living in societies like in Soviet Union or in fascist Germany and so on, where there was total control, they can well imagine what it means to use this amount of data and this way of processing and all capacity of AI for total control in society. To prevent that, it's not about legislation. It's about the people who are educated, knowledgeable, and capable for reflection. But people cannot do that in this situation without using AI as a part of their life, without being capable with the help of technology to master this new environment. And I suppose that's the most important thing. In this legislation, what we developed, we put really on the top kind of call for technology developers to create or to reach the situation where the autonomy of user, where data subject capacity to know what is the information collected about him or her, all this process of giving consent, so on, it will be supported by technologies. Technologies which are not only user-friendly, that is very narrow, but which really are privacy safe, individual autonomy safe. Like we are really very much trusting the airplanes. We enter airplane, we are trusting technology. We know that this technology is controlled and built already up and checked in order to bring us safely from one point to other. The aim of the new, say, era of this data protection regulation, privacy regulation, really is to reach the same principle of safety, inbuilt safety. Privacy by design, data protection by design, privacy by default should be as everyday principle, simple and understandable as it is safety in traffic, safety in the air traffic, in the trains and so on, because it is more and more important even than this physical moving. The information, the digital world, the digital environment is more and more the everyday world of everybody. So that's my, message, what I wanted to bring. Coming back from Brussels into real life, I think that this experience is important. And also this experience of really knowledge gaps, what we have between different sciences, between technology and humanity, between the understanding of human being, which is not complete, and also between this technology development and cultural processes. Thank you.